Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay? If you can hear me okay, please, somebody just put a message in the chat. It should work correctly, but it's a new platform for us. It's the first time we use it, so I just want to make sure everybody sees the presentation, everybody can hear me loud and clear. So please, okay, yes, we can hear. Okay, sounds good. I'm glad to hear that. By the way, this webinar will be also recorded, so it will take about 90 minutes, and after those 90 minutes, you can use the same link that you used to join this webinar to see the recording, right? So you can come back anytime and see the whole recording. Again, thank you everybody for joining this webinar. My name is Peter Sima. I will be the host of today's webinar. And as you can see here on the presentation, the topic of today's webinar will be Google Analytics 4. And we've created a poll. Actually, this poll has 3 questions. So on the right-hand side, you can see there's a chat icon. Underneath, there's a Q&A icon, and then there's a poll icon. You click on that poll icon, you'll see these 3 questions. And if I can ask you to take a few seconds of your time and just answer those questions, that would be helpful, because we will during this webinar, we will share data that Google collected from all Google AdGrants users on how they use Google Analytics, and then we can compare your answers in this post with the data from Google AdGrants team. And by the way, also over there on the right-hand side, you have a chat window. So if you have some, problems or things like that, feel free to write them in the chat. And also there's a Q&A. That's the second icon from the top. In the Q&A section, if you have any questions at any point during this webinar, write in there, and I will get back to all of them towards the end of the webinar. Right? So just post your questions in the Q&A section, and I'll get back to them towards the end of the presentation. I'll try to answer all of them. All right, so we can get started, I guess. And yeah, here we go. Let me introduce myself quickly first. So I'm Peter Sima, and I'm a founder and consultant at advertising agency About X Digital. In About X Digital, we focus on marketing for, online marketing for nonprofit organizations. Most of our clients use Google AdGrants campaigns. Some of them also use commercial Google ads, social media campaigns, and other platforms like that. But everybody typically starts with Google AdGrants, so that's what we specialize on. I've been working in search engine marketing since 2010, and we've been, as an agency, I formed this agency in 2014. So ever since, we've worked with more than 170 different organizations. Besides this role, I also work as a Google certified trainer. And since 2018, I've been nominated by Google to this trainer role. And that means that I also educate nonprofit leaders, nonprofit marketers, how to get the grant, how to use it efficiently. And part of what we do, obviously, is also the Google Analytics setup. We also set up Google Tag Manager. We've assisted many different organizations with transition to Google Analytics for last year, et cetera, et cetera. I know we get asked questions about Google Analytics quite often. So we thought it'd be a good idea to summarize all these questions and give you all the answers on this webinar. Just quickly about the agency, we are a Google certified professional agency, which means that Google looked into how we manage campaigns for our clients, and they looked into best practice adoption, things like that, and they've certified us. Being part of that community, it also means that we have access to premium support from Google, and we have access to new features. Yeah, and the amount of grant that we manage per year exceeds $10 million. And obviously, we will be happy to answer any of your questions or help you with your Google AdGrants campaigns as well. But the goal of this presentation is not to do any hard sell or anything like that. The goal really is to educate you on Google Analytics 4. So let's move on. And this is the content of today's webinar, right? So we'll first talk about Google Analytics 4, what it is, why it is important for NGOs, how they can utilize Google Analytics, what are the, how to find your way in the interface. It's still fairly new, and many nonprofits do not know where to find certain reports that they could find in the old interface. So we'll take a look at that as well. We'll then talk about conversions and events and goals. Then we'll give you a quick overview of one of the accounts. So I'll show you in an account, where you find what, how to set it up, etc. And then towards the end of the webinar, we'll talk about future challenges or, sort of news and new trends in Google Analytics. First and foremost, why Google Analytics, right? I mean, it might sound like a stupid question, but you'll be surprised, and I'll get into that a little bit later, to find out how many nonprofits, not just nonprofits, but also commercial businesses, how many of them do not even use Google Analytics to track the quality of the data, right? And when we talk about nonprofits, because that's what we focus on, these are the most common challenges that NGOs face, and where these are the areas where Google Analytics can help them, right? So with Google Analytics, you can answer questions like, for instance, what's the traffic volume? What are the trends in that volume? Is it going up? Is it going down? How are we doing, right? Which traffic sources, which campaigns generate conversions at what price, right? What is the ROI ultimately, right? If you invest, especially with paid campaigns, you need to know, how much money that's generated. Then with Google Analytics, you can answer questions like, who are the visitors of your website in terms of geography, in terms of their gender, in terms of their devices or browsers that they use, for instance. Then you can use it to analyze how different content pieces work, which blog articles are the most popular, how do people find these articles, etc. Yeah, for instance, you can also use it to answer questions like, for instance, what motivates people to do certain actions on the website. You can check their paths, or you can see how they interact with the website, how they proceed from page to page, right? What are the call to actions that work, etc. And here's a roulette table. And again, you'll be surprised how many, even online marketers, take guesses like this, right? They use their gut feeling, they use their emotions, they use their perhaps experience from the past to make qualified decisions about their investments, about their marketing campaigns, and they do not take full opportunity of data that's available to them in Google Analytics. Right. Our goal is to change that. Our goal is to always educate our clients and explain them that the most qualified decisions are decisions based on the data. Right. So that's why we're here for. What's impossible without analytics, right? So in our opinion, it's almost impossible to invest seriously in online marketing, because without a way to measure results of these campaigns, we're basically just shooting a bullet in the dark, something like that, which you don't want to do if you're investing your money, especially in a nonprofit world where money are typically scarce and budgets are tight, right? So you need to know what's the outcome of those campaigns. Also, you cannot, without analytics, you can't identify issues in your website, right? Without analytics, you do not know if the load time is too long. You don't know if people get stuck on certain pages because there's an issue. You don't know if the page doesn't load correctly on certain browsers or certain resolutions, right? So there's also a very valuable area that you can use Google Analytics for. And you can use it for planning, right? And comparison, right? So if you have multiple pages, multiple projects, you can see how what people do on one of them, what do they do on the other one, compare it and learn from that, and then focus on what works, right? And then obviously you can use it for reporting, which is, I guess, one of the most common scenarios here. Now, when I look at your poll, actually everybody who voted yes on the first question, which is, do you use Google Analytics on your website, right? So you probably have a certain level of understanding. So I will not go into the bare basics. So I'll just quickly, for those of you who are not that tech savvy, Google Analytics is a tool. It's a free tool from Google. You can use it for quantitative and qualitative analysis of the website traffic. It requires implementation, right? So for Google Analytics to work, there is a piece of code that needs to be added on the page that you want to track. And after you do that, you start gathering data about your website visitors. And there has been a switch from Google Analytics 3 to Google Analytics 4 in mid 2023, right? And now let's look into the data, right? So, and this is data coming from Google data research between small and medium-sized businesses, and 90% of those SMBs do not even have a website. right? Local shops, older people, less tech-savvy people, people who just do not conduct business online, they don't have websites, right? 90% of people don't even have websites. And then 55% of SMBs have websites, but they do not track activity on their website. They're just not interested. At some point, somebody told them you should create a website, so they did, but they have no idea about what's happening on their website. 55%, which is just quite shocking to me, but this is fairly recent data. And 26% of those small business owners, they have a website and they also track activity on it, right? Which, I mean, that's ideal and everybody should be in the last group. Now, when we look at the percentage of entrepreneurs when we look at what they track on the website, 48% of those who track data track just the traffic, right? So all they look at is how many people were on the website, right? That's it. And 32% of the people track something more than that, which is where they came from, right? What are the traffic sources? And only 23% of the people actually have conversion tracking set up and track conversions and uses that data as a feedback mechanism to improve their online marketing. Now, and there was data about from commercial businesses, right? And now this is data specific to Google AdGrants users. So these are nonprofit organizations that use Google AdGrants, and these are the questions that I put in the poll, right? So when Google asked Google AdGrants users this question, how many of you use Google Analytics to measure the traffic on your website? 67% roughly said yes, and 33% said no. Right? And again, when we look at the poll, everybody who's here uses Google Analytics, which is great, which is definitely more than the average. And the second question was, how often do you work with Google Analytics? Right? And again, if we look at our poll here, 43% almost said that they work with Google Analytics 1 to 4 times per week, which is a decent frequency, I'd say. And 57% said that they work with it 1 to 5 times in 6 months, so much less than that. If we look at the data here, majority of the people, actually there's no majority because there are free groups with 25%, but those free groups are people who work or who use Google Analytics 1 to 4 times per month, or 1 to 5 times in 6 months, or people who don't know, right? Very few people, only 8%, use it more than once a week or more frequently, right? So what this means is that most nonprofits use Google Analytics, but they only check data 1 to 4 times per month, basically, right? Not many people do it more frequently, which is a shame because sometimes these things change fairly quickly, and my recommendation would be to open Google Analytics and check at least basic reports at least once a week. If you have, I mean, it only takes about 10 minutes or so. We'll take a look at the most important reports, and so it doesn't take more than 10 minutes, and you should be able to find those 10 minutes at least once per week, and I think that will give you a lot of insights. And a last question here was, do you track conversions with Google Analytics, right? And again, these are nonprofit marketers, and 67% said no, right? So they don't even have conversion tracking set up within Google Analytics, and 16% said yes, and similar amount said that they don't know, right? When we look at your answers, 50% said yes, so 50% tracks conversions, 33% said no, and 1%, which is 70%, said that they don't know, right? So again, you're slightly better than average here, but goal of every Google Analytics user should be to track at least more, those most important conversions. And also, it is one of the compliance requirements in the Google AdGrants program. So if you use Google AdGrants, you need to track conversions, and you need to import those conversions into Google Analytics. Okay, so now this might look a little bit confusing, but this is a list, or a graphic that shows most important web analytics tools, and you can see there are different groups of tools, right? We obviously do not have enough time to review all of them. So we'll just focus on tools from Google. And in this category, which is web and mobile analytics, obviously there's Google Analytics with them, and that's something that we'll discuss in more details today. But as you can see, there are other tools there as well. Why I wanted to show you this is, because you should understand that Google Analytics is one of the tools. It's not the only tool, right? It's one of the few free tools, right? So most of these other tools are paid tools, which comes with certain benefits as well, and I'll talk about it later. So Google Analytics, is a great tool to start with. It's easy to connect with other Google services, etc., etc. But it has certain limitations, and especially now in this era of privacy regulations, GDPR, and all sorts of privacy laws coming up, Google isn't necessarily the most compliant tool, right? So we have clients that look for other alternatives to Google simply to be compliant, right? We're talking about health data, health centers, clients like that. They are actively looking for other alternatives, right? So I just wanted to mention that there definitely are alternatives. And one more thing that I wanted to mention here is the section of tag management. Google has their tool called Google Tag Manager, which is again a free tool. We use it heavily with our clients, and this tool can be used to implement Google Analytics and also implement different conversion tags on the website. And it basically just simplifies deployment of different trackers on the website, right? Now, why Google Analytics, right? What are the advantages of Google Analytics over those other tools there? Well, first and foremost, it's free. Like I said, most of these other tools are paid tools. And Google Analytics 4 especially is a tool that's suitable for websites as well as mobile applications, and it does its job decently well on both fronts. It's very well integrated with other tools from Google, like Google Analytics, Google Search Console, or Google Looker Studio. It has many basic as well as advanced metrics. It has reports that you can modify. The opportunities are endless, right? It can be a very complex tool if you configure it correctly. The implementation is fairly straightforward. There's short code that you need to put on the website, and it works. At least the basic functions work, right? If you want to do something more advanced, if you want to track click-based events or form submissions or things like that, that requires additional implementation steps, which we will also cover today. And also, Google Analytics support is fairly extensive. It's one of the most popular web analytics tools on the planet. So, there's you can find many articles, many videos, a lot of answers on forums, etc. Google provides support, which is not always perfect, but they do provide support as well. Obviously, there is a paid version of Google Analytics as well, which is used by larger corporations, etc. And if you use that, then obviously you have much better support. But there is certain limited support even for Google Analytics, for the free version of Google Analytics. Now, I've sort of talked about this already, but what are the scenarios where NGOs use Google Analytics? Most typically they use it for assessment of campaign success, various campaigns, right? So depending on how you configure your conversion goals, you can track all sorts of campaigns. You can use it for website optimization. You can optimize your navigation, content, identify problems on the website, etc. You can gather info about your website visitors, which you can then use to create better content or optimize website, etc. And you can use it to monitor trends and even forecast future, which is a discipline on its own. But you can also export the data and then extrapolate and forecast certain trends. But Google Analytics comes with its inherent limitations, right? First and foremost, you need to understand that Google Analytics is only as good as the implementation, right? Like I said, the implementation is simple. There's one piece of code, you add it on the website, it works. But with that kind of implementation, you only see basic metrics, right? You do not see how many people clicked on different things, right? If you want to track custom events like this, you need to configure them, right? But I'll talk about it a bit later. Now, limitations. there are limitations when it comes to the privacy policy. There are different privacy laws in different countries. We have clients, for instance, in Germany, where GDPR law is, I guess, the strongest out of all EU countries, and these clients really struggle. Google Analytics isn't compliant with all GDPR regulations. There is a whole policy around how to treat cookies, and again, Google is not necessarily compliant, right? So that requires the implementation of additional things called consent mode version 2, which we'll talk about also a little bit later, right? So there's also one of the problems there. Also, it's without configuring custom events, you cannot track seemingly basic things, like, for instance, time spent on the website. You need to have certain events that fire after somebody spends a certain amount of time on the website. So even things like this that seem logic and easy to track, they're not included there without more advanced implementation. And also, you cannot identify different people, right? So you do not see their email addresses. You only aggregate anonymized data, right? But you do not see, okay, who's this person, and then let's see what this particular person from this city and with this email address and this name, what did he do on the website? You will not be able to see the data. You just see aggregate reports. You see how many people did something, but we always, larger segments, larger groups of people, and it's designed like that to protect the privacy of this individual website visitors. There is a data sampling problem, which is not in all reports, but in some reports it is. And this issue especially affects the larger websites, right? If you have millions of visitors, or even sometimes even thousands or tens of thousands, it'd be very demanding when it comes to server resources on Google's side to analyze the behavior of every one out of these thousands or millions of visitors, right? It will require a significant processing power and energy and all that. And since this tool is free, obviously they cannot do that, right? So Google solves it by sampling the data, which basically means that Google looks on a certain part of the group. So let's say if you have 1,000 visitors on the website, they will only analyze behavior of 100 visitors, which is 1/10, and then they will make a projection where they'll multiply all the metrics by 10, right? I just obviously simplified that. But data sampling basically means that they only actually analyze behavior of a certain sample, and then they make a projection, and that way they show you the data. But it doesn't mean that people actually, everybody behave like that. So it's a certain approximation. Obviously, if you have a paid Google Analytics tool, this doesn't happen, and you see the actual data, more precise data. Then there's a lot of spam and robot traffic, which causes fluctuations in traffic. Sometimes you see, suddenly there's been 5,000 people who visit your page, and then you dig deeper and you see that the traffic came from some bot, just to show you some information within Google Analytics, things like that, right? So that also happens. You can filter that traffic out, you can remove it, but it can be irritating. And last but not least, Google, you do not own the data, right? The data is owned by Google, and they do not guarantee functionality, right? So there can be some downtime periods, right? And you cannot complain. It's free, so what do you want? That's basically their answer, right? Again, if you have a paid solution, that's a different story. Now, okay, let's look into a little bit more technical things over here. So since most of you use Google Analytics, you might be familiar with the term URL tagging. And it's very important to understand this, right? What it is, if you have let's say you have an email campaign, right? And you want to include a link that goes to your website, that's over here. And now, if you want to track how people who came to your website from this link, how they behaved, right, in Google Analytics, you need to append this these URL parameters, and you can do it manually, right? So Google, for instance, has this tool, right? So you can go in this tool called Campaign URL Builder, and you put in your source, medium, campaign, etc., all these parameters, and Google will generate this link for you, and then you can use this link anywhere you want. When people click it and land on your page, these parameters will be transferred over to Google Analytics. You can go to the traffic source report, and then you will see that these people came from, and then you see these parameters, right? So that way you can track traffic from email or essentially any other campaign. If you use Google Analytics, obviously you might have hundreds or thousands of different ads, and changing URLs in all of them could be time consuming. So there is a more clever way, which is automatic tagging. That means in Google Ads, in settings section, you can just check this box. And when you do that, then Google will automatically add a parameter called gslit. And there will be some random numbers and letters here. And that's a way for Google Ads and Google Analytics to communicate and exchange information. When you do that, without any changes to your URLs within Google Analytics, you will see immediately campaign name, ad group name, keywords, all the important data from Google Analytics. All that gets transmitted in this gslit parameter, which gets appended automatically. Our recommendation, if you have some custom tracking set up, always use auto tagging in your Google Ads accounts. Now, these are the results. Okay, it's just an example, but basically, when you use URL tagging, when you go to your traffic source report, you will see something like this, right? So you will see different traffic sources, and for instance, you see how many people came from YouTube, how many people came from email, how many people came from CPC, which is cost per click advertising, affiliate, etc., etc. And if you use your custom parameters, you'll see them over here as well. And that way you can see exactly, how many people came, how they behaved on the website, etc. Now, a common situation that many nonprofits, and not just nonprofits, also commercial entities face, is a situation when people land on the page, but where they transact on another domain, right? So for instance, over here on this example is one of our clients called Brown Foundation, and this is their website, right? This is their domain, Brown Foundation, cdc.org, right? When people land on this page, for instance, from Google Ads, they'll land on their donation page, where they solicit donations, and there is a donation button. When people click on this button, when they'll decide to make a donation, they're being transferred to a third-party payment gate. This one, and that's a third-party payment processor. So it's not their domain; it's a different domain, which you can see over here. And over here, they can choose the amount, and they can put their credit card information and complete donation. Right. The problem is, from analytical perspective, the problem is, obviously, this is not their domain. So their Google Analytics tracking code is not included on this domain, and they cannot track what's happening over here. Some of these platforms have an option for you to enter your tracking code, and then you can see the data from this page within your Google Analytics account. So that's what we did with them as well. But still, there is a second problem, and the problem is that, let's say, from Google Ads with auto tagging, right? People land on their page, right? So over here, Google Analytics sees, okay, these people came from Google Ads, they came from this specific campaign. But when from here they navigate to a new domain, Google Analytics that's implemented on this second domain doesn't know that originally these people came from Google Ads. All they see is that this is a referral traffic that came from their homepage, right? So over here in Google Analytics that's configured on this page, you just see this as referral traffic, and you cannot attribute it back to that original Google Ads campaign that generated the traffic, right? And now, and this is a very common scenario, right? Some e-commerce shops do that. They direct people elsewhere where they complete the transaction, etc., etc. Now, what to do? Right, it's a very common problem, and the solution is there, but it requires some experience and some work. What we would recommend here is to integrate Google Analytics into that tool, right? So you can use payment gates like Classy, or PayPal, or Stripe, and Google has integrations with these platforms, right? You can we'll send you this presentation after this webinar, so you can just click on the link, read more on that topic. But you can fairly easily integrate these payment processors with Google Analytics or Google Ads and get the data that way. If you use a payment processing vendor that doesn't have integration with Google Ads. Sometimes you can just reach out to them, you can send them the code, and they can implement it for you. So that's also an option. If none of that works, you can still track clicks on buttons that lead outside of your domain. So coming back to this example, you can implement an event that fires every time somebody clicks on this donate button. Obviously, you will not know how many of these people completed the donation, but you will at least know how many people had that have made that decision to go to the payment gate, right? So it's better than nothing. So you can do that. Or you can track how many people visited your thank you page, right? Oftentimes, after people complete donation on that third-party domain, they get redirected back to the original domain where they land on the thank you page, right? And you can then track how many people visited the thank you page, which again, you will not have the full picture, but you will at least know how many people completed the transaction. And then if you implement the click tracking and tracking on thank you page visits, and you can at least see the ratio, and then you can use the ratio to make your calculations, calculate the approximate ROI, things like that. All right, so now let's move on to the second part, which is Google Analytics for overview and orientation. So I've already mentioned that there's been a significant change in Google Analytics last year, specifically on 1st of July 2023, when Google stopped supporting Google Analytics free. On that day, all Google Analytics free properties stopped recording data. Right, they're still available. Right, so you can still go into your Google Analytics free account. You can see the historical data, but there's no more data is recorded there, and Google created an assisted sort of step-by-step guide here, which you can see in your Google Analytics account. And again, we don't have enough time here to review the whole process, but here are the steps that Google suggests when transitioning from Google Analytics 3 to Google Analytics 4. You can use the setup assistant. So that's, I guess, the easiest way to do the transition. Google will basically take most of your settings and reports and they try to recreate them in Google Analytics 4. It's not perfect. It doesn't it doesn't try. Excuse me. Excuse me. So it doesn't it doesn't transfer all the events, right? So when you have a little bit more custom implementation in Google Analytics 3, you might still need to recreate some of that manually. But for those of you who had basic setup in Google Analytics 3, it's very easy to use that tool and make the transition, right? There are other steps here, like for instance, you should turn on Google Signals, which gives you additional information. Also helps with retargeting campaigns and things like that. You can add new users in Google Analytics 4. You can link it to Google Ads, migrate audience, etc., etc. Right. So, but anyways, this list is available in Google Analytics 4, so you can go there. You can click on each one of them, and Google will clearly explain you what needs to be done. But I guess most of you have already transitioned, so I will not spend more time on this. Now, a very hot topic right now is, what do we do with the Google Analytics free data? Because Google announced that Google Analytics free data will only be accessible until 1st of July 2024, which is in about a month from now. After that date, you will not be able to access the Google Analytics free data anymore, right? And now, for instance, we get many requests where clients ask us, okay, let's compare data from this year with 2023 data, right? Obviously, in 2023, at least in the first half of the year, they use Google Analytics 3. Now they use Google Analytics 4. So we need to export certain data from both platforms and compare it with in Excel or other tool like that. Now, when you get a request like that after July 1st, you won't be able to export data from Google Analytics 3 anymore, right? So it's advisable to create a backup, archive the Google Analytics 3 data. It's not important or not necessary to archive all the data. but you should at least archive data um, from reports that you use frequently, right? So you should think about it and list out the reports that you use or you have used in the past, and make sure that you archive that data. And you can either do manual exports, right? So in every report there is a little icon with an arrow. You can click it and you can export the data in CSV or other format like that. And you can select any time frame you want and just export it like this, which is, I guess, the simplest way of doing that. But the recommended way from Google as well as from us is the second option, which is using this add-on. It's called Google Analytics. It's a Google Chrome add-on. So if you just Google Google Analytics spreadsheet add-on, you will see this. You can install it, and with that add-on, which works with Google Sheets, you can select which reports, which metrics you want to export, and it will. I mean, it takes some time, but it basically downloads the data through API from Google Analytics and will put it into Google Sheets. You will have different tabs, different reports. It looks nice. It looks just like what you see here, and you can keep it there. You can keep it in Sheets, or you can download it and use it in Excel. So this is the recommended way. And if you're more tech savvy, if you have a programmer on site, etc., you can download data from Google Analytics via API or BigQuery, right? So that's also a way. Again, we'll not cover it today, but if you look up, Google Analytics API, you will find documentation online, and you can download data that way as well. Now, again, this is one of the popular questions that we get. What's the difference between Google Analytics 3 and Google Analytics 4, right? Or why is this transition happening? So to answer that second question, why is it happening? Well, I ask that in Google because I like Google Analytics 3. I don't like Google Analytics 4 design-wise that much. So I've asked them, why is this transition even happening? And they basically said that Google Analytics 3 was outdated, and it was designed for desktop experience, right? So it was dated back to like early 2000s. Obviously, mobile traffic at that time was non-existent or close to non-existent. So this tool was really optimized to track traffic on desktop websites, standard websites, right? But then obviously, I remember that was around 2010 or somewhere there. That's when Google announced that the mobile traffic actually surpassed desktop traffic worldwide, and Google Analytics 3 wasn't really up to date, and technically it wasn't designed to track traffic there. It wasn't designed to track traffic within mobile applications that were getting increasingly popular, etc. So and Google Analytics 4 is different. Google Analytics 4 is designed with mobile, in mind, and technically it works very well also in mobile apps. So they basically wanted to create one tool that tracks it all, and that's Google Analytics 4. And as a part of that, there are a few significant differences. And you can see the most important difference here. In Google Analytics 3, which is also called Universal Analytics, there were all these types of hits, right? A hit was essentially every time somebody visited a page or did something on the page, that was a hit. And out of the box, Universal Analytics tracked page views, transactions, even, right? App views, user timings. You could see immediately how much time they spend there, etc. In Google Analytics 4, that's different. Everything is tracked via events, and these events need to be configured. You can have an event. The event can be anything, right? It's up to you how you define that event. It can be a situation when somebody spends more than 30 seconds on a website. That can be an event. Or if somebody clicks on certain buttons, that can be an event. If somebody scrolls all the way down, that can be an event. If somebody watches a video, etc., etc., etc. So it's up to you to define those events, but you need to configure them to have that information in Google Analytics 4. If you don't configure any events, you will still see basic data. You will still see, how many people went on the page, where they came from, what are the most important pages or most visited pages, etc. You will have that information, but you will not see any details about how people interacted with your page, which is typically the most valuable and most useful type of information. Now, this is what the interface of Google Analytics 4 looks like. Again, for most of you, it's probably just a repetition, and we'll take a look at it together. I'll go into the interface and I'll show you exactly what I mean by this. But long story short, there are four tabs like this in the menu. The first one is a home tab, which is essentially an overview of key metrics. You can click on them and they will take you to different reports. The second section is reports, right? So that's where you see all the predefined dashboards and reports. The third one is Explore, which is an interactive tool where you can sort of mix and match different metrics and dimensions and create reports on your own. And also, there should be AI in the future. You can ask questions to Google and they will give you answers and things like that. And then there's advertising, which that's in that section you can see information from Google Ads and all other traffic sources. You can see the list of campaigns. You can see the conversion reports, things like that. And the last one is an admin section where you can configure Google Analytics. You can manage users. You can adjust settings and things like that. Now, here's some basic terminology, right? So, and I think it's important to understand that there are differences between these terms. Google uses them quite frequently, and many people don't understand them. So, the first term that I want to explain is the term segmentation, right? So, the segmentation or segments within Google Analytics are essentially certain groups of visitors, let's say, right? So data selections, right? And you can create these segments based on different parameters. So you can, for instance, create a segment of people who visited the page from a mobile device, right? And you can use this segment in any report, and then you will see, all traffic, and then next to that you will see just traffic from that segment, right? And you can then see on any report, if you apply that segment, you will see data just for those people who came from mobile device, or you can create a segment for different countries or different browsers, or anything you want almost, right? So understanding this is important when you do any kind of data investigation, right? You may want to, if you see something interesting in a certain segment, you may want to then look at different reports and see how people from that segment interacted or what they did, etc. And the second one is dimensions. And dimensions are essentially additional data points you can add to your reports. So let's say you have a breakdown of traffic by country, and if you add the dimension for city, right, then you see not just country, but next to it you see different cities, right? So it's one more granular level, right? So you look a little bit further down and you slice the data by something else, right? So then these are called dimensions, right? The next one is metric, which I guess is quite self-explanatory. Metrics are the different measures, right? So it could be things like page views or events, right? Or anything like that. Those are metrics. And then there are reports, and reports are essentially overview, lists or tables that show data or a specific period of time, right? So always you can change the time period, and then you can see data in that time period, and you can define the metrics, dimensions, and segments, and all of that will appear in a report, which you can then also export. All right, and this is also important to understand, and this is something that gets confused very frequently. And what I mean by that, visit doesn't equal visitor, right? So a visit is essentially a situation where a visitor lands on the page, right? So when a visitor lands on your page, it creates a visit. But that visitor is a unique person that visited the page, and that unique person can come back many times, right? So then you have many, or no, sorry, I got confused myself. Unique visit is created by a visitor, but then there can be different visitors, and they can create just one visit, right? So visitors are people who visit, and visits are occurrences when somebody visits the website. It's not the same thing. And also clicks and visits are not the same thing, because clicks are used in advertising systems, like in Google Ads, for instance, right? So when people click on the ad, that's a click. It doesn't mean that everybody who clicked on the ad actually landed on the page, right? There could have been technical problems that happened when the page was loading. That person can have an ad blocker installed, and that ad blocker can also block Google Analytics script, right? So that person clicked on the ad but never got recorded in Google Analytics. Or there could be, many other things that could have happened. Because of that, typically clicks are higher than actual website visits, and the discrepancy of up to 10% is completely normal, right? That's what we see. Sometimes, like I said, in countries like Germany, when people use the ad blocker, there are strict cookie policies. People do not interact with the cookie banners. They're not tracked in Google Analytics, etc. So the discrepancy could be even more than 10%. And now the topic of attribution. This is, I know I'm jumping from topic to topic, but I try to address all the questions and all the most important concepts within Google Analytics, and one of them is attribution. What it is, Google, or not just Google, but basically the conversion journey isn't linear. It's not straightforward. It doesn't work in a way, when we come back to that donation campaign, right? It doesn't work in a way that people click on the ad, land on the page, and donate right away. It doesn't work like that typically. I mean, there might be a small percentage of people who do that, but typically there are more channels involved, right? People click on the ad, they read about the organization, then they exit the page, they think about it, and they see a banner, or they get retargeted on social media, they interact with that ad, then they might subscribe for a newsletter, then they get a newsletter, and then they click on the link in the newsletter, and then there's Giving Tuesday, and then that's when they might decide to give their money to that organization, right? Now the problem is, okay, that person has interacted with Google Ads, with Facebook ad, with email, and then there was a conversion. So which one of these touch points gets the credit, right? Which one should get the credit for that donation, right? Because you need to understand which one was efficient. But if there are multiple, how do you decide? And that's what the attribution is all about. In Google Ads, you can see a report like this. I think this is from Google Analytics, but you can also see it in Google Ads. And that's a report that shows you different interactions, right? So it shows you, okay, and then you see numbers here. You see how many people came from organic Google and then directly, or how many people came from paid Google ad and then to referral, or email, etc., etc. And you may see different combinations, different number of channels, different number of touch points, right? And that way you can see how people typically interact before converting. And Google uses different attribution models. In the past, this one has been the most popular model, which is last click model. So again, coming back to this example, how it works, let's say a person, it's November, and there's somebody who's doing holiday shopping, right? So they first do the research on their cell phone, and they don't know what to buy to somebody, but they know that this somebody likes tech, right? So they might do a search like this, right? And then they see a tablet, and they might think, okay, this will be a good gift, right? And the next day they come back to this and they say, okay, let's pick a good tablet. So they do a different search, or something like this, highly rated tablets, and again they do it on mobile. Then they read some reviews, etc. And then obviously, because this slide is taken from Google, they think that Google Nexus is the best tablet out there, which I doubt, but okay, let's assume for now that that's the case. And so they say, okay, I want to buy a Nexus tablet, right? But typically people convert still more frequently, they convert on desktop, which is more convenient, especially for older people, etc. So then they might come to desktop. They know what they want. They do a search like this, and then they convert. All right. The problem is, and on this example, there were 12 conversions like that. The problem is, with last click attribution model, if this was an ad, this ad on desktop will get all the credit, right? So if you don't know about the whole path, you might think, okay, this is the only campaign that makes sense. But the question is, would these people actually get here without these prior steps, right? And NAS-click model completely ignores that. It gives all the credit, all 12 conversions will be attributed here to this campaign that targets this keyword, right? which is not necessarily true, right? So there are different attribution models that tackle that a little bit better. And that could be, for instance, first click, which also is not very fair because it gives all the credit to the first channel in the conversion path, or there's linear, which gives, essentially 25% of the conversion is attributed to all 4 touch points. And there's position-based, time decay, or there's data-driven. And data-driven is highlighted here because data-driven model is actually recommended from Google. Google moves away from all these other attribution models. And even when you create new conversion action in Google Ads now, I think by default the data-driven model is selected. And the data-driven model basically uses Google's AI to distribute parts of the conversion value into different channels, depending on how prominent those were. Google knows how much time people spend on different interactions with the website, etc., etc., etc. So it splits the conversion into certain parts which get added to different channels. So, I mean, Google says that this is the most correct model. So my recommendation is to use that model whenever you can. Now, where to find help? Right? I mean, we still have more slides left. This is not the end, but I want to make sure that you know where to find Google Analytics sources. So there is a Google Analytics Academy from Google, which is free, and you can complete that and learn a lot about Google Analytics. So if you want to educate yourself in this area, this would be a good starting point. There's Google support, so if you use Google Analytics and you have some problems there, you can reach out to them over there. And like I said, there are many forums, agency blogs, etc., which you can use to find information about Google Analytics. And you can also contact us, and we can also help you out with that. We'll be happy to do that. Now, so that was an overview of Google Analytics, and now let's look into goals, right? Why I think that's important. Well, conversion goals are in my opinion, that's the single most important piece of data that can be tracked within Google Analytics, and it should be tracked, right? Whenever you can, you should configure conversion goals. And actually, I don't think I've ever seen a website without any conversion goals. There's always something that can be tracked, something that is of value to you, right? And the definition of conversion is, like I said, up to you, right? But typically, what we do with our clients is that we configure things like contact initiations or donations or clicks on social media icons or newsletter subscriptions, right? These are the most common goals, but we always review the whole website. We create the list of conversion actions, and then we have a conversation with the client, and then we finalize the list. And after we have a list like that, then we create those conversion actions within Google Analytics. Right, but coming back to this slide, what are those conversion goals? Again, those are actions made by the visitor of your website, and these should be valuable actions, right? And the definition is up to you, and they're essential for campaign success assessment, right? So if you want to track ROI, if you want to track how successful your campaigns were, if you want to justify your investment, you need to have conversion goals set up. And again, this is a slide from Google. These are the most important conversion goals for NGOs. There are volunteer signups, downloads of different files, donations. There could be also engagement goals, like for instance, time spent on the page or number of pages visited during a visit. Then there could be interaction with videos, playback time, things like that. And there are newsletter signups. These are the most common conversions. But again, you should review your own website and create a list like this on your own. Now, once you have a list like that, how do you set up those goals within Google Analytics? And there are a few ways to do that. The first one, which is a recommended way, is to is to add an event code, or tracking code to your page, and you can do it manually. Meaning, let's say you want to track how many people clicked on the donation button, so you just add that event code, which you can generate. You add that code within that button, right? So if somebody clicks on the button, this piece of code sends that information into Google Analytics, and then you track it as an event or goal, if you will. It's the same thing. Or you can use it, or you can implement it via GTM. GTM stands for Google Tag Manager. Coming back to that overview with all the tools, I said that there is Google Tag Manager, which is a free tool. You can implement Google Tag Manager in your website. And then within Google Tag Manager, you can define, okay, if people click on this button, and you need to define this button, then send this event into Google Analytics, right? So you can do that configuration within Google Tag Manager, and you do not need to make any changes in your website, right? So especially if you have more events, or if those events change, I would definitely recommend using Google Tag Manager, because then you just do not need to bother your web admin all the time, and it's just easier to implement and change those events moving forward. When we set up these goals or events for our clients, we always give them two options. One is what we call basic setup, and that basic setup means that we'll just track things that we can track within Google Analytics without any modifications to the website source code, right? So for instance, those engagement goals, right? How much time people spend on the website, how many pages they visited, etc. They can be configured within Google Analytics without any further changes. So it's simple, but obviously it's basic, right? It doesn't give the full picture. It just gives us an information about how many people had, some larger engagement with the website. And the second option that we give to the clients is what we call advanced. And advanced basically means that we'll actually use Google Tag Manager, and we'll implement click-based goals, clicks on buttons, form submissions, things like that. Yeah, so that's that. And now how to do the implementation, right? This is one of our clients. This is a screenshot from the Google Analytics 4 account. If you go to the admin section, and I'll show it, I'll do a live demo of that. But when you click on the admin section, there is a subsection called Web Stream Details. When you open it, you'll see this implementation instructions, right? So this is that piece of code. You can copy it from here, and you can either install it within your CMS system, or if you don't have a CMS system, you can just install it manually, which means copying this and pasting this into your website source code, right? So this is the first step, and you need to do this to track data within Google Analytics 4, right? So again, without this step, you will not see anything within Google Analytics 4. So you need to take this, put it on your website. And the second step is the step where you define what you want to track. Okay, again, this is one of our clients. This is a kids museum, and as you can see here, they have many different call to action on their website. Right? So, for instance, you can click on this button and you can become a member. There is a membership form that you see after you click this. You can click on different social media icons. You can click, for instance, on this and land on the donation page. You can sign up for the newsletter. You can click on this and purchase tickets, etc., etc. Right? So when we see a situation like this, we list out all these conversion events, and then we set them up in Google Tag Manager, right? So that every time somebody clicks or has interaction with any of these, that information will get transmitted into Google Analytics. It will get, and that information will be tracked via so-called events, right? So again, those events are essentially situations when somebody click on something or complete some action on the website, and when that information gets transmitted into Google Analytics. That's what we call events. And you can set them up via Google Tag Manager, which I've already talked about, or you can manually implement them via codes, right? So you can again, if you Google how to create Google Analytics events, you'll see those codes. You can create one code for each action, and then just place it on the respective places within your website's code, right? And after you do that, after you implement events like this, and after you link Google Analytics with Google Ads, and again, I'll show you how to do that, you will see a list like this. And this is a screenshot from Google Ads. And this is a list of conversion actions, right? So within Google Ads, then you will start seeing these different conversion goals, which, as you can see here, the source of these conversions is Google Analytics 4. So they were created within Google Analytics 4 and they were imported into Google Ads. And with this particular client, again, this is this kids museum, they sell tickets online, right? So we track things like, okay, how many people visited the login page, how many people went to the second step of the shopping process, which is a visit to a cart page, and then how many people went to the payment page, how many completed the order, how many people donated, etc., right? So we track all these steps as different conversion events, and these conversion events are exported or synced with Google Ads, and we use auto tagging. Right, coming back to the beginning of the webinar, we use auto tagging, so Google Analytics knows which campaign these people came from. They know when they completed the conversion event, and they send that information back into Google Ads, which is what you want, right? And then over here, when you set these conversion actions as primary, that means that these conversion actions will also appear in the conversion column, right? In Google Ads, one of the columns is conversions, and all these primary conversion actions appear within that column. Now, value-based tracking. And I know this, again, this is a very broad topic, but what you need to know, these are the basics, right? What you need to know is that value-based tracking is very important for all the transaction-based businesses, all the organizations that solicit donations or anything of financial value, right? Because when you, coming back to what I've shown you on the previous slide, if you add an event, for instance, on the order completed page or thank you page or whatever that is, okay, if somebody completes the order, you'll have that information in Google Ads or Google Analytics, but you will not know what was the purchase value. You will not know what was the actual revenue. And without that information, obviously, you cannot calculate ROI because you cannot compare the revenue data with your cost data, which is what you want, right? So you don't want to just transmit the event that fires when somebody completes the conversion, but you want to also transmit the actual value of the purchase or of the donation or whatever that is. And so it basically adds a qualitative dimension to these goals, which, like I said, in certain businesses, I mean, this is key, right? Then you can do it in two ways. One way is a so-called fixed value setup, where you just look back historically and you calculate your average order value, and then you add it in, right? So in Google Ads, you can manually set a value of each conversion action. And let's say if your average order value was $50, you set 50, and then every time somebody completes a purchase, obviously each one will be worth $50, and then you can add a column for conversion value or cost per your conversion value divided by cost or whatever it is, and then you see it in your reports. Obviously, the problem is that not every conversion is worth the average amount, right? So if you want to be more precise, you will need to do the dynamic setup, which transmits real values into Google Analytics. And to do that, you will need to integrate Google Analytics with your payment processor. It could be Shopify or Classy or any other payment gateway like that. And most of the big ones have integrations with Google Analytics, right? So you just need to input your tracking code into that platform, and it will automatically transmit values. If you don't work with a third-party payment vendor like that, if you have a custom e-commerce setup or something like that, you will need to do it yourself. There is a whole section within Google Analytics called e-commerce settings. And again, I've added a link here. You will need to follow Google's guidelines to transmit the actual conversion values into Google Analytics. Now, what are the top reports for most NGOs? And again, this is based on our experience. This is based on the requests that we get from our clients, so it might not be valid for everybody, but we think that these are the most useful reports for nonprofits that you can find in Google Analytics. there is a traffic acquisition report, and I will show you where to find them. Okay, there is a traffic acquisition report, which will show you where people came from, so different traffic sources, and then you can compare how these people behaved from different sources, how much time they spent on the website, how many events they completed, etc. So that's a very good one. You can see campaign performance. If you run multiple campaigns, you can see them, and you have Google Ads synced with Google Analytics. You can see the campaign performance also in Google Analytics. You can compare campaigns from different channels, even Google Ads campaigns versus Facebook campaigns, etc. You can do that all in Google Analytics. A very useful report is also a report where you see a list of most visited pages. Again, if you create content, for instance, you want to know which content got the highest number of visits or interactions, etc., etc. User attributes, and those are things like where they came from, which browser they used, which device they used when visiting the page, etc. Right. So again, if you know who your audience is, you can then tailor your content and optimize your page towards those largest audience segments. And then conversion report. So obviously, once you configure those events, once you configure those conversions, you need to know how many people completed them, but also what was the conversion value, etc. And there is a report specifically for that. And demo, right? So a lot of theory, and let's now look into one of the Google accounts. And here it is. And this is one of our clients, and this is just an example. But I want to show you some of the most important reports that I've just talked about. Right. So coming back to what I said in the beginning, you have this home section. Right. That's where you can see, for instance, where people came from, where the top traffic sources, where the top pages, etc., etc. You can click on these little icons here, and it will open up those reports, and you will see exactly the details, right? So larger reports, more data, etc. Over here on the actually not here, but when you go to other reports here, you can then see the complete list here, and you can change the time frame here, right? So it typically defaults to this month, but you can change it. You can check the data from last 7 days, or any other time period you want. And again, when you click on reports, it will take you here, which is report snapshot, where you see all sorts of data. You see the traffic trend. You see even live data, which you can see more details here, right? You can see how many people are on the website right now. That's very useful, by the way, for testing, right? So when you, for instance, create conversions and you create some test conversions, when you go to this real-time report, you'll see exactly, okay, did it come through, etc., right? And again, you see all sorts of things here, where they came from, what were the top campaigns, etc., etc. My recommendation is to go in here and to go into traffic acquisition. That's the traffic report that I've just talked about. So over here, you see all the details about the different traffic sources, right? So you see, okay, their top traffic channel in this time period was organic search, right? And then you see how many people came, or how many users. And again, if you hover over on this, you see little explanations there. So you will see, how many users came from organic, so non-paid listings on Google mostly. You can see how many sessions these users generated, right? You can see how many of them were engaged. What was the average time that these people spent on the website, etc., etc., etc. And more importantly, you have this, which is events, right? So this is where you see all the events that these people from this traffic segment completed within this time period. And then you have this section, which is called key events, right? And key events, that's a just newer term for conversions, right? Google just introduced this new name fairly recently, but these are basically conversions, right? And over here, you can see how many of those events, because not all events are key events, right? You can select which of these events are the most important ones for you, and then you can see them over here, and you can even see what they are, and then you can click. If I would click on one of these, it would just show me how many of key events of this type were generated, from each traffic source, right? So there's a very good report to look at. And you can also add more dimensions here. So if you click on this plus, and let's say you want to see, okay, how many of those organic visitors came from, let's say how old they were, right? So, or I mean, I mean, I added gender, said something else, but let's say age. Okay, they don't have the data, but I'll add, for instance, here country, right? This should be available. Not all combinations of dimensions data is available. So sometimes you might see things like this, but for instance, a combination of country and traffic channel is available, right? So you see different countries here, and this report goes on, right? So over here I just see first 10, but there's 244, and you can then see the full report like this. And also, if you want to export it, there is typically an option to export it, which is over here. So you can export it. You can even edit it. You can share it, right? You can customize it. So if you want to change these columns, you can go in here and change it, etc., etc. Right? But it is a very useful report. One of the basic reports that I would recommend checking on a regular basis. Also, if you go in here into engagement, this is where you see the list of top pages. It's also one of the very useful reports, right? So over here you will see different pages. You can see that their events page is the most visited page right now. Over here, when you don't see anything, that's their home page, right? That's their home page, and then different types of pages. And again, you see all sorts of metrics for each one of that. You can see where they converted, etc., etc. Over here, you can see the overview of different events, right? So for them, even a page view, somebody lands on a page, that's an event. So basically, it's not a key event, but it's an event. When somebody has engagement with the page, that's an event. When somebody scrolls on the page, etc. Those are all events. And then these are the shopping, and these were created, by the way. These are default events, right? That's what I said. So if you just add the code on the page, you will see basic events like this in here, but you will not see those custom events. Like for instance, how many people went to different sections of the shopping process. You will not see that, right? So this requires further implementation so that you see events like this over here. You have you have all sorts of reports here. We don't have enough time here to look over them. Maybe just one more that I would like to show you is this one. When you go to user attributes, it's where you see demographic details, which is a good one. You can again change this. It doesn't have to be country. It can be city, language, etc. This way you may discover if you have, let's say, many organizations in the U.S. have significant part of Spanish-speaking traffic, for instance, etc. So it is a place to look for things like that, right? And you can also do this tech breakdown where you see the browsers, devices, right? Here browsers, you can change that devices, resolutions, and then, for instance, you may do here screen resolution, and you can see how they behave, right? And if you, for instance, see very little or very low engagement time on certain resolution, they might indicate a problem. They might indicate something that on that resolution, perhaps the page doesn't render correctly, etc., etc. Right? So there's also a good report to look at from time to time. Check how people behave on different platforms, different devices, and you can use it for troubleshooting. So that's that. Explore, like I said, we that's not, we don't use it very often. We mostly use this one, and then we use advertising. So let's look into that as well. And in advertising section, especially if you run Google Ads, this is a very important section to look at, because over here you see the attribution paths, right? That's what I've talked about, right? Is where you can see the different combinations of channels that were in the conversion path, right? So this is where we can see the combinations, you can see the values, you can see even days, right? So how long the conversion paths were, etc. And over here you can see data from Google Ads. So this account is linked with Google Ads, so you can see names of their campaigns and all sorts of information, cost, clicks, etc., etc., etc. Right? So and obviously they have conversion tracking set up. Again, conversions are called key events now. So you can see your conversions. You can use this report to analyze performance of your campaigns. And obviously not just Google Ads, but you can go to this all channel report. And if you have like for instance here they have paid social, right? So they have campaigns outside of Google Ads, and if you use proper tagging, URL tagging, you will see all the sources here. Again, coming back to what I said in the beginning, if you set up those custom parameters, you'll see them over here, and then you can compare campaigns to campaigns, see how many conversions they've generated, how much they've cost, how efficient they were, etc. Right? Those are the most important reports from our perspective. I'll quickly show you this admin section as well. This is where you can do the setup. So if you go in here to the data streams, you go in here, and then you can go into configure text settings. Yes. This one is just troubleshooting, but over here, this is where you can get the code, right? So if you click install manually, this is where the code is. You can take it from here. You can implement it on the page. You can also troubleshoot your implementation in here. So that's an important one. Then there's user management. That's where you can add new users, modify users, etc. But I want to show you this section here, which is a list of events. Again, like I said, some of them are custom events or basic events that are tracked out of the box, but most of these events were configured by us, right? For instance, like we created this list of conversion actions. The client, for instance, wanted to track how many people clicked on a link that goes to Google Maps, right? So that was one event which we configured, and now we see the counts here, right? And if we say, okay, this is an important event, and I want to track it as a conversion, then over here you just flick this switch, and now if this is blue, that means that it's tracked as a key event or conversion, in other words, right? So this is how you do the configuration here. Over here you can see the list of these key events. So these are the actions that we track as conversions. And one last important thing that I want to show you is this one, and that's Google Ads links, right? So this client has 2 different Google Ads accounts, and both of them are linked to Google Analytics. If they had more accounts, we would click here, link, and then we would this email address that has access to Google Analytics also needs to have access to Google Ads, and if that is the case, then you should see the account listed there. You can click it, and they will create linking between Google Ads and Google Analytics, and then all the conversion data gets imported. You'll see Google Ads data in Google Analytics, etc., etc. So if you advertise on Google, my recommendation is to definitely link these accounts and enable auto tagging to see all the data here. All right, let's go back into the presentation, and I'll give me 1 second. I'll just like this. I have a few more slides left. We have about 10 minutes left, so I think this is good timing. Yes, 10 minutes left. So I call this slide way ahead. So what's coming up in the Google Analytics environment? And you can see here, privacy, right? So this has been the topic for a while, but now Google and European Union is getting really serious about this. What I mean by that is that Google is being pushed by the EU to push on advertisers and website owners to treat cookie data or privacy data correctly, which basically means that you need to, if you have traffic from users based in the EU, you need to implement a cookie consent policy. You need to have a cookie banner. These people from the EU need to see the banner, and they need to be able to choose if they want to share their data with Google Analytics or any other analytical tool or not. And if they do not interact with this banner, or if they reject to share their data cannot be stored within Google Analytics, right? And Google is really serious about that. It says that it will start limiting certain features within Google Analytics if this isn't implemented correctly. There is a okay, I don't have it here, but within Google Analytics there is a checklist where you can see if your cookie consent mode is implemented correctly, and if it isn't, you should look into that, do some studying on cookie consent version to, and you should make sure that your website is compliant with this new cookie policy. But coming back to this, what it is, cookie consent mode version 2. Again, that's a way to trade, store, and share user data, cookie data, and it's regulated by the EU user consent policy. And that doesn't mean that if you're not based in the EU, this doesn't apply, right? If you have traffic from the EU, you should be compliant. And Google, like I said, we have clients from the US. They have a very small percentage of EU traffic, yet they get these notifications in Google Analytics that they're not compliant. They will give them deadlines to fix those problems, etc., etc. So our recommendation is for everybody to check if they are compliant with this cookie policy, and if not, act quickly, because Google, like I said, they state they will start limiting certain features. It's like retargeting, like ad personalization, etc., etc., etc. Now, it is a complex topic. We could have a webinar like this just on this one topic, so I do not have enough time to discuss it in detail. But when it comes to implementation, correct implementation of Google Consent Mode version 2, the first step is to add this cookie banner on your website. There are many tools out there that are compliant with this Consent Mode version 2. Our recommended tool is CookieBot. That's what we use on our website. It's quite user friendly. You can set it in a way that the banner only shows to people from the EU, right? So you do not need to bother people from other countries, etc., etc. So that's our recommended solution. And after you implement it on your page, you need to do the backend configuration within Google Tag Manager. And within Google Tag Manager, you need to define, okay, if people, and you can see an example here. This is our website here, and this is what the banner looks like. And you can see here that people can choose what kind of information they want to track, just necessary cookies, or they can set their own preferences. They can check, they can give their consent to track marketing cookies, etc. Right? Or you can take an all, right? So there are quite a few options here. And then you need to configure Google Tag Manager in a way that, depending on the selections that they make here, certain types of information can get transmitted to Google Analytics, and certain types of information will not get transmitted based on their preferences here. And they can also change their preferences. They can come back, open the banner, and say, okay, I don't want to share my information, marketing cookie information with you anymore. Right? And if they do that, then this information needs to be transmitted into Google Tag Manager, and it needs to be treated accordingly. Right? So there is a whole logic that needs to be implemented behind it, and we've summarized that in a blog article that you can find here. We also included screenshots from our own experience, how we implemented it, etc. So you can use that to do the implementation on your own. Or if you need help with this, we did this for a few of our clients in the past, so we'll be happy to share the information with you, and we'll be also happy to help you with correct implementation of this cookie consent mode version 2. And this is what I've talked about, right? So when you're Google Analytics 4, when you go to admin section, data streams, you can see these so-called consent settings, right? And there are 3 points here, and you should see, once it's implemented correctly, you will see this green ticks here. If it's not implemented correctly, you will just see something like this, right? Not detected, which means that a cookie consent mode, according to Google, doesn't work correctly. You should open this up and see what is the problem, and fix it. And within 48 hours, you should change the green tick if it has been implemented correctly. All right. Questions? Let's check how much time we have. We have some 5 minutes left, which is just enough time. So I will now go into the Q&A section. It seems like we okay. Let's see. There's some questions in the comment section. What about SEMrush? I think this question got asked when I talked about the different tools. SEMrush is one of the tools used primarily for the SEO work, or for analyzing the traffic of your competitors. It is a good tool, but it's not, up to my knowledge. I mean, it's been a few years since I used it last time, but it's not a tool. It's not a comparison. It's not a tool comparable to Google Analytics. It's not designed primarily for analytics purposes. It's really here to analyze traffic from websites that you don't have access to. At least that's how I used it in the past. So you can put in any page. It gives you estimated traffic, estimates on which keywords they use, which traffic channels they use, etc. So it's a good tool to use for analyzing your competitors, benchmarking yourself against your competitors, etc. But when it comes to analyzing traffic on your own website, Google Analytics or those other specialized tools are much more precise. All right, and there is one question in the Q&A section. If you have more questions, feel free to ask. Okay, we'll be happy to answer them. And the question is, after we converted to Google Analytics 4, we can no longer use demographics such as age and gender. How can we get that info to return? That's a good question. And I think actually that's the issue also in the account that I've shown you, right? I mean, I opened the gender or age dimension and there was no data there. There could be different reasons there, but typically it is related to those Google signals, right? Or, you know, because this even in Google Analytics 3, you had to enable kind of extended version of reporting to see data like this. And it's sort of similar in Google Analytics 4. So you need to enable these Google signals, you need to enable other more advanced, or you need to give Google's other more advanced permissions to collect more sensitive data like this. And when you do that, when you enable signals, this data should start populating, right? So I think it's just a matter of how you've configured Google Analytics 4, and most likely will be related to those signals, Google signals. All right. Does anybody else have any questions? All right. Seems like no. I hope everything was clear. And the last slide I have is a thank you slide. We're just on time. So thank you again for attending this webinar. I hope this has been helpful for you. I hope that this might motivate you to use Google Analytics or any Google Analytics account that you have more frequently. Again, the recording will be available on this very same link, so you can come back, check it again, stop anywhere you want. Let us know if you have questions, if you need help with Google Analytics for Google Ads or cookie consent mode implementation or anything like that. We'll be very happy to do so. And that's really all I had. So thank you again for spending this time with us. There will be more webinars coming up, so please stay tuned. We'll always send the information via email. So yeah, that's really all. Thank you again for attending. Have a nice rest of the day. Bye bye.